Gatos Planning Commission meeting is now called to order, of October 8th, 2025 is now called to order. I will now call the roll. Commissioners, please state here when your name is called. Commissioner Burnett?
Here.
Commissioner Raspy?
Here.
Vice Chair Birch?
Here.
Commissioner Stump?
Here.
Commissioner Sorty?
Here.
And I am here as well. Please note for the record that Commissioner Barnett is not present. Please stand if you are able as Commissioner Stump leads us in the pledge.
Please join with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the work of the Commission. The public can participate in several ways. Prior to a meeting, written comments about agenda items may be submitted to staff, and during the meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. First, during the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda. Second, during the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, any member of the public may speak about an agenda item. You will be advised of the times when to speak on these items. If you wish to address the Commission tonight during verbal communications or during a public hearing agenda item, please raise your hand on Zoom, or for those here in person, complete a speaker card and give it to a staff member. When you are called to speak, please come up to the podium and speak directly into the microphone as this meeting is being recorded. You will have 3 minutes to speak. We will now begin with the verbal communication portion of the meeting, during which members of the public are invited to address the Commission on any issues that are not on the agenda. For tonight's meeting, staff will announce when your 3-minute time limit is up. I have one speaker card for this, Captain Seuss. And when you come up and speak into the microphone, your 3 minutes will start.
Hey, I'm Captain Zeus. I brought this up, picture one. I gave you some pictures. And last night I talked at a town hall meeting, and we talked about, one of the things was the reporting when 800 top brass reported at Quantico on 9/30 for the Department of War. If you watched last things, I was a PE major and I turned into Captain Seuss. I lost a grade because I became Department of Peace versus the thing. So that's my first picture. Planning Commission, I've been talking to you about Civil War coming up, and that's, I think, a major issue because of all the stuff that's going on. And picture number two is the blue states. They're defunding us. And picture number three, these are all facts, is the person that drove into the church, came under attack, and it was, I think leading red on that one. Picture four is a picture that I found online recently off a video, and it's showing that the flag, it looks like the flag being lowered during that Trump shooting. And in picture number one, I've been, you can see this little wanted poster, and I've been saying there's a second shooter, and if we can find that second shooter, and it has a date on it and stuff like that, and I have done that a lot of. Also, I'll be passing these out. That way you can see the second shooter, and it has a time stamp of 7/13, and it's just there's a video out, and it's off of video, and it's important that it's an Agent Smith that was never reported, and the video showed, and it's way back when, on November 5th, I sent this to a committee and showed the town. A lot of people in the town know about it. Mayor Mary Badami saw the video, and she sent me to the town council and said, hey, you know, and you guys aren't, I mean, the town council wasn't doing it, but what I'm saying is, I went to federal courts and stuff like that, and they don't, it's like this guy here is just covering up. He's hiding things. And what I'm saying is, this reminds me of the Olympics Games in 1936, and so, you know, it's one of those things. Okay, I was to go on Project 2026, which is all the sporting stuff, which I rather do than warn you guys. But I think it's important that you guys have some sort of plan for the
Chairperson Thomas, there's a 3-minute limit.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Okay, thank you. Are there any hands raised on Zoom?
There are not.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the consent calendar. Tonight, we have 2 items on the consent calendar. Draft minutes from our last 2 meetings. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the commission or public may request that it be removed or make public comment related to it. And I believe there is a request for that from Mr. Seuss also. And no one on Zoom. Still.
There's no one on Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Just coming as Mr. Zeus. I thought this was to be first. I passed out these little cards for September 10th, and I appreciate what you guys did in correcting a lot of the stuff. I would, instead of a member of the public, back then I was a Munchkin, and that's because this is trying to request a yellow brick road, safety issues on Lynn Avenue pathway, and also on across the street 151 East for the high school, because it's really dangerous and stuff like that. So I was trying to combine those two. And then, so it would be, I would just say I have major concerns on recent, you know, like Civil War. These are major things. And then the last thing was, I'm glad that it was 6-0. I did have question Rob Stump's involving it. So I mean, it was one of those things where, you know, I'd like to see that if we would talk, you know, privately, I would want a unanimous vote on, you know, something like that, because. And I understand that. That's what I just wanted to bring up. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? No. Okay. So. Thank you very much. Thank you. Maybe that's why Commissioner Stump didn't vote last time, because there were no flowers. No, I'm just kidding. He was not here for that meeting. He was absent from the original meeting, so he didn't vote on the minutes, I believe. So we will be moving on to discussion for consent calendar. Anyone need anything else to be said about that? Okay, then we get a motion maybe? Okay.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to the public hearings, starting with item number 3, which is to consider an appeal of a community development director decision to deny a request to remove a pre-1941 property from the historic resources inventory for property zoned R-1D located at 24 Pleasant Street, APN 529-26-016, request for new PHST 25-013, exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15061B3. Property owner, applicant, and appellant is Swapnil Raut and Rashmi Jadhav. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate you giving me some grace. And Mr. Nathan is the project planner. And before he presents the staff report, can I just get a show of hands of commissioners that visited the property? And are there any disclosures? Great. Mr. Nathan, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is an appeal of a Community Development Director's decision to deny a request to remove a pre-1941 property located at 21 Pleasant Street. The Santa Clara County Assessors Database lists the construction date as 1926, and the house first appears on the Sanborn Fire Insurance map in 1928. The subsequent maps show that the footprint of the residence remained consistent through 1956. The property is not within the historic district or the landmark historic preservation overlay. However, it is included in the 1990 Annie Bloomfield survey. On August 27th, the Historic Preservation Committee considered the request and voted 2-2 with one committee member absent from the hearing to recommend denial to the Community Development Director, finding that the residence still had integrity and overall the design is in keeping with the Mediterranean revival style of that period. The director denied the request for the removal on August 28th, and on September 5th, the director's decision was appealed to the Planning Commission by the property owner. The appellant provided additional letter in support of the appeal, which is included in Exhibit 7 in the staff report, and the staff report outlines the points of the appellant. For the reasons stated in the staff report, it is recommended that the Planning Commission deny the appeal, uphold the director's decision to deny the request to remove the property from the inventory, unless the Planning Commission can make the required finding to remove it from the inventory. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Yes, Commissioner Sorty.
Yeah, question on the staff reports. I'm looking at the background section, paragraph 1. It says the property is not within a historic district or a landmark and historic preservation overlay, but it's included in the 1990 Anne Bloomfield survey, providing a preliminary rating of historic, and then it says some altered, and I'm not sure what that sentence is saying. It might be saying in some alterations, but still a contributor to the district if there is one, and then it makes reference to Exhibit 3, Attachment 2. I'm not sure what that sentence is trying to say either, but I guess, I guess my basic question is by virtue of the fact that it is covered in the Anne Bloomfield Cultural Survey, by definition make it an HRI property, or is it based on the date of pre-1941 or both together?
Well, thank you for the question. I'll have the planning manager explain that.
So thank you for that question. The Anne Bloomfield survey wasn't limited to just any properties that were in districts. It was really looking at older homes in town. And it was a windshield survey, so it was conducted without examination directly in front of the residence or around the residence. It was really from what you can see from the sidewalk. This rating of a check mark is interpreted through the Bloomfield sort of index that that it's historic with some alterations. It doesn't, this one, the survey sheet notes the aluminum windows, which would not be original, and that if it were located in a district, which this one is not, it would be rated high enough that it would be considered a contributor to the district. And hopefully that answers your question, but.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I guess, yeah. So in order to state, I guess what I'm struggling with is it doesn't seem like there's a black and white determination about whether a property is in the HRI. Whereas other jurisdictions in the South Bay, I know, literally have a list of what is in the HRI and what is not. In the case of the town of Los Gatos, it appears as though it's kind of open to interpretation.
I think that's a great clarification. The town uses the date of 1941 as the cutoff. So if you are pre-41 and you're not in a district and you're not individually designated, you're considered presumptively historic. And the design guidelines and the code allow an opportunity for owners of properties to ask to be removed from the inventory, but it's considered presumptive, and the Historic Preservation Committee looked at this and couldn't reach consensus on whether it should be removed from the inventory, so therefore it would stay in the inventory. So we do have a defining line of the pre-41. We have, within the group of historic in the inventory, we've got different ratings of contributor or individually designated properties with the LHP overlay.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Burnett?
This isn't a question. This is a thank you survey. Your staff report was excellent. It was very informative, and I just appreciate the work you did on the staff report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Raspy?
Thank you, Chair. Quick question, and this may be a question better suited for the applicant, but if you know, my understanding is the property has a total square footage of 1,166 square feet, and that includes the addition, which was built in 1957. Do we know how big the addition is in terms of square footage? And if you don't know, I'll just direct the question to the applicant when it's their turn.
I do not know the square foot of the addition, but the entire floor area is 1,165,
Correct.
based on county assessor's data.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Are there any other questions? I do have one question. If so, I am on the HPC, so I heard this item and voted on it, and because we only had 4 people present, it was a tie. So could I think maybe Mr. Mullen, could you explain how that goes to what the decision made by the community development director?
Thank you. I can start, and either the director or the town attorney can jump in. When a tie is reached, the motion that's pending is considered failed, and in this case, the motion was to recommend denial. It's a little awkward that the denial fails, but without going back and making an affirmative motion and then letting that fail with the same vote. In the end, the request was denied by the director.
Okay, that makes sense because, okay. Do you want to follow up, Vice Chair Birch? Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. We will now open the public portion of the public hearing on item number 3 and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. So if you want to come up, whoever will be speaking, Swapnil, thank you, on behalf of the appellant, and then you can, you'll have 5 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can adjust the microphone. I know it's kind of difficult to adjust, but if you want to move it up, it will probably catch your voice.
This is good.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you. I would like to take this opportunity to thank, on behalf of my wife here, Rashmi, and my daughter, who just turned 6 yesterday. So thank you. I'm here to respectfully request removal of my property from historic registry. While we value Los Gatos history, this home no longer meets the criteria of historic designation due to loss of integrity and substantial alterations over the time. I would like to present some facts in front of the committee here, starting with loss of architectural integrity. Original front and side windows have been replaced, compromising the authenticity of historic fabric. Key character-defining features that would justify preservation are no longer present. Then substantial structural alterations. A major rear addition, including an extra bedroom and expanded living area, has significantly changed the home footprint, plan, and design from its documented historic condition. That answers, sir, your question. So originally the house was at around 1,100 square feet, and they added around 200 some square feet. That makes current square footage of 1355, and that's substantial. And if you look the house from the front, you can see the rear is completely visible, and it's not completely aligned with the original roof line, and that makes it, we checked with the architect and the other who could make the decision, and they said that we cannot guarantee that this is as per the codes. So moving on, changed roof line and external appearance, which I was speaking about. The current roof line and exterior do not reflect the original architectural style, making the structure inconsistent with its period of significance. Also, does not represent Mediterranean revival. Although this house was defined as Mediterranean revival, and we love, absolutely, and going forward, our plan is to keep this house as a Mediterranean, but currently, this house categorized as Mediterranean revival, the house does not retain the defining characteristics of that style in its present form. It is basic structure lacking the distinctive details required for architectural significance. The house retains only generic stucco and small entry tile accent. It lacks the primary character defining features of Mediterranean revival, most notably a clay tile, hip gable roof, casement divided light windows, arched windows, opening, ironwork, and arcaded porch massing. The visible modern window replacement and flat, low roof line further diminish architectural integrity. Again, moving forward, non-unanimous HPC decision. The Historic Preservation Committee decision was not unanimous, indicating legitimate expert disagreement about ineligibility and reinforcing that the property does not clearly meet the threshold for listing. And in closing, I would like to mention, we greatly value the rich history and character of Los Gatos and remain committed to maintaining the charm and aesthetic of the neighborhood. Our request is simply to allow us the flexibility to make thoughtful updates that supports our family's needs while staying aligned with the community's visual traditions. We appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker at this time? Commissioner Stump?
Just out of interest, when you purchased the home, were you aware of it being in the Los Gatos Historic Resource Inventory?
We were not. And that came up when we purchased the house, when we were closing. We came to know from the online documentation when we started reading, and then we asked the question to our agent that, hey, is this house historic? And as we read forward, and we realized that before 1941, all the houses are historic. So by that time, we already made purchase, and it was our long-term dream to be in this city, and so we went with the purchase.
At the meeting on August 27th of the Historic Preservation Committee, the meeting minutes record comments, and they're not probably verbatim or an actual quote, but it's read something like this: they love the Mediterranean Spanish-style house and intend to keep it, but they want to expand the house to fit their family, understandably. Going along with that, have you actually considered remodeling this, or have you just moved directly to you want this house demolished and be able to start anew?
No, our plan is not to completely demolish the house. We want to keep, and as I said, we love Mediterranean Spanish style, and we want to keep that integrity. And all we want to do is make it more beautiful, which will align with the city, guidelines and the style. So we, in fact, want to make it more beautiful. If you look at the current house, there's literally, based on our research, there are 14 to 15 significant characteristics of the Mediterranean style, and this house barely meets 3 to 4, sir. And what we would love to do is make all those points, considered while remodeling the house and make it more beautiful Mediterranean style.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Burnett?
So taking it out of the inventory, you feel that it would have to come out of the inventory to make the changes that you would like to see for the home? Is that?
That's a great question.
Is that what you're saying?
And yes, we would love to take it out. there are like certain things that you're limited to do when the house is historic. And when we consulted with the architects, they mentioned sometimes the change to accommodate the basic needs. For example, the front portion is completely cut out on the right side, and that's like a significant space for our family that we can use. But in order to add that complete space, with being historic house, we won't be able to probably do that. So some of those things, when we consulted with the architects, they recommended us to remove it from the inventory.
Yeah, any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We will now take comments from the public. Is there anyone from members of the public? Is there anyone on Zoom?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Oh, but we have some people. Okay, and there's no one in the audience here, so we invite you back up to make your closing statement. Thank you. And so you will have an additional 3 minutes to speak if you have anything else to share, and then we'll have another opportunity to ask you questions.
No, I don't have any special closing comments. All we want to do is say thank you for your time, and we appreciate all the efforts that city does, and we are respectful about it. We understand the guidelines and the historic nature of the city, and our actions won't be anything to dent that history of the town. Our only intention is to accommodate the needs of our family, and we follow the rules.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions at this time for? Okay, thank you very much. We will now close the public portion of the public hearing on item number 3, and I invite commissioners to ask questions of staff, provide comments, and eventually propose a motion. Commissioner Stump?
Yes, if staff would please remind us, should this property remain in the historic resources inventory, what of the original home and how much of it must remain to stay within demolition thresholds?
For historic property, the demolition is a little different from non-historic. So anything that's street facing, if it's 25% of just any facade is removed, then it would be considered demolition. And in its entirety, 50% or more would be considered demolition. Considered demolition.
If I could follow,
if the planning director want to add anything.
If I could follow up on that. What other remodeling restrictions are placed on the homeowner based on being in the historic resource inventory, other than the standard building requirements such as setbacks, height restrictions, FAR, et cetera? What are the restrictions?
Well, they won't be able to change anything in the front street-facing facade, but they can add to the rear. They could also add a second story in the rear, but they have to go through the Historic Preservation Committee and see what their feedback on the design is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sordi?
I have kind of a technical legal question. I'm struggling a little bit, as I did the last time we had one of these, with the findings. And sometimes they're not referred to as findings, I've noticed in some of the reports. Sometimes they're referred to as considerations. So I guess my question is, where exactly do these findings live? Do they live in the residential design guidelines, where at the top of the paragraph, I think it makes reference to section 4.6? 4.6?
I'll say what I know, which is they're derived from the criteria that are used by the state and federal entities that regulate historic structures. They are not contained in the town code, but the town relies on them by virtue of not having other criteria at its disposal. Okay.
And then, sorry, not having had the benefit of finding exactly where they live in the design guidelines, did the design guidelines reference them actually as findings or considerations? And do you have to make all 5 in order to deny?
So Sean will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is they're just criteria for the Planning Commission to consider. And so they're all of equal weight, and, any one of them would be grounds for making a decision.
Okay.
And,
Because I
and I
noticed,
just add further, and then Sean can also correct me if I'm wrong. They are not laid out in the guidelines in this manner. They've just been extracted as criteria, as Ms. Whalen mentioned, similar to national and state considerations.
okay, if I could just follow up on that. So I noticed that the maker of the motion at HPC used the fact that it could not meet one of the 5 considerations as a criteria to deny the appeal.
Yeah, the publications that the town is relying on have them all as equal weight, and they're all independent elements that can be used as the basis for a decision.
Okay. So there's no requirement that all 5 be met? Because I noticed even after a couple of them it says or, or at least one of them it says or. So, okay.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The federal and the state guidelines all say or too, meaning that any one of the findings could be the basis for a decision, or I should say any one of the criteria.
Okay. And then one quick other follow-up. Sorry to be so into the weeds on this, but are there any other decisions that we generally make that aren't based on findings in the town code? I mean, is it common to have findings that are outside an ordinance?
No, this is very unusual.
Okay. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Burnett.
Okay, so how this all came about was with the Bloomfield study that started, and we had historic districts, and then like this home is a pre-1941, and the way it was, the windshield survey, it showed that if it was in a district, it would be considered a contributor. So it becomes presumptively historic. So then that puts it in a category that if you want to change it, you have to meet certain character defining things have to be absent from it to take it out of an inventory. And I know when it came before the Historic Preservation Committee, which I'm on, the home, it hadn't changed from the original windshield study done by the Bloomfield survey. It was added on to, but you have to take into consideration when there is an addition, if it's altered in a sympathetic way, that it goes with the home. And after looking at the home and seeing the side and the roof line, I felt it had a sympathetic alteration. And that's one defining characteristic and finding that I found why it should not be taken out of the inventory. But there were other considerations as well. If you also go to historic integrity, which is one of the findings that we use, it's still, these resources, if I quote from it, they need not be frozen in time. They do change. And again, it goes back to, with the change, has it been altered enough to where if you drive by the home, you say, oh, I don't know what style that is or whatever. When you drive by this home, it does look like what it's been described as a Mediterranean revival, Spanish revival. It still has the same stucco feelings. Yes, the windows have changed, but those can be restored as well. So the other, let's see, what was the other in our town code? Again, it states that was the remodel adversely affected, was the home adversely affected by the remodel? And I couldn't find that finding in it. The other character defining features, I feel it still has a lot of the character defining features of this style of home, even though there's been changes. And then, so basically, I feel it should stay in the inventory. There's a lot of homes that are added on to, and I feel sympathetic to your needs and what you want to do. I really do. But You know, this town, we really treasure sort of our inventory and the homes of pre-1941, so it's sort of a struggle. But for me, the findings don't match the need to take it out of the inventory in my study. Thank you.
Vice Chair Birch.
So I do appreciate the desire to keep homes on the historic registry, but I actually disagree that this home has much of any characteristics remaining of a Mediterranean revival style. And it has been modified enough that I wouldn't have driven by it and known what style it is. And we've seen this quite a bit in the town. A lot of times these smaller bungalows, families move in, they expand them, they have to do certain repairs, roofs and other things to keep it livable. And there was a time frame where just the regulations were not as tight as they are now about how those updates and everything were going to need to be done. And so you wind up with homes that maybe had an original look and feel that just kind of gets a little bit Frankensteined as it keeps going. And to me, that's kind of what we see here. I also know if you start talking about remodels on these historically, they wind up being a technical demolition, because the way these homes were built in the 1920s, reframing them is a nightmare, and getting electrical redone, the mechanical systems redone, and time to time again, it's become a technical demo because they uncover everything and it's not as constructible. To me, I find that this home doesn't meet any of the, there's only one that we have to find, of the 5 criteria to keep it on the registry. I cannot find any significant architectural style remaining based on all the remodels.
I have a question for all. I just want to clarify something with staff. What year again was the addition done? The addition was done in 1957? Okay. I was like looking for the date and I couldn't find it. Okay. So then I do have just a follow-up question for staff regarding the Ann Bloomfield survey, because, you know, I noticed that the only note of alterations was the windows, but obviously the addition, I had thought that from my previous meeting, that the addition was done significantly before that. So is that just because it was a very brief window?
Thank you for that. It's possible that the addition wasn't even noticed from the street because the addition is made to the back of the residence, that they were really only looking at the front facade and what they could see without going on the property. And that's the amount of examination that they had available to them.
Okay, and so then the roof alteration part, because that seems to have happened before the Ann Bloomfield survey too, but that's not noted either. Correct? That happened before, I think. Sorry, I'm kind of asking you.
The records are very few in our town, and there was nothing I found for the roof changes, but just looking at the material, seems like something was changed over time.
Okay.
And just to add, I mean, obviously we see existing pre-1941 homes that are just doing a roof or something. If this had, you know, clay tile or barrel tile roof on it, and someone came in and said, hey, we want to do comp shingle, we would say no, even with it just being pre-1941. So as Mr. Nathan mentioned, records aren't always great, especially with roofs. Surprisingly, people can re-roof their houses without getting building permits every once in a while and not get caught. So we see this type of thing quite often throughout town.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to, that was something that I noticed, was that I know that like we rely heavily on this survey that was done. However, I did notice that there were, you know, missing some of these like notes about alterations that I believe are very obvious. So I feel like those were missed at the time. Commissioner Burnett?
Yeah, I don't know what alterations we're talking about. I know there was the addition and maybe the roof material was changed, but I think the house looks basically what it looked like when Ann Bloomfield did the study, and she's a pretty famous historian from San Francisco and said it would be a contributor. So even though, and I don't think we look into what it takes to remodel or restore, or people that are in construction, and they look at those things, but that's not what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be looking at, does this house still have character defining features? And from my estimation, it hasn't changed since the original Bloomfield study, except maybe roof, windows, but the outside, the facade, has not changed. And I think that's what our role is to, many people have kept it in the inventory. There's no reason why you can't add on. In many homes, if you go down San Benito, most of those homes have been, they started out as pre-1941 and had additions added, and they've done that. So I just keep coming from that aspect or that view, but I'm willing to hear what our other commissioners say. It's just my view, being on the Historic Preservation Committee, and I look at that as my role, and for good reason.
Anyone else have any comments? Do you want to say something? Yes, Commissioner Raspy.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm actually, this one I'm a little divided on. The house was built in 1926, remodeled in 57, and as we've been talking about, the Bloomfield survey was done in 1990, and at that time it was noted that it was historic with alterations. I guess there's some discussion about whether the rear addition was noted during the Bloomfield study survey, and that's kind of where I'm torn. My first question tonight was, how big is the addition? And it was estimated that it's plus or minus 200 square feet. So that puts it at about 20% of the total building footprint. So I think under any reasonable measure, that's a significant alteration of this building. Did Ann Bloomfield see it? I don't know. I think it's a good debate that can we have a building that's been altered by 20%, even if the alteration appears in the back, can we still call that a historic or a building worthy of historic protection? And I honestly, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm still considering it, but I think for me, that's where the linchpin is it's been changed. And I think the discussion hasn't been changed since Ann Bloomfield did the survey. It hasn't been changed since 1941. And the answer to that is yes. So is that a significant enough change to take it off the inventory? And that's where I am.
Commissioner Sorty.
So kind of harkening back to part of what I said about my questions about the findings, I guess the answers I got to my questions about the findings. So it looks like, for me, it's sort of moving overwhelmingly in the direction of upholding the appeal, because 4 out of 5 of these considerations can be met easily. So the structure is not associated with events that have made a significant contribution to the town. No significant persons are associated with the site. 3, willing to grant that there's some characteristics of the time and period that are still in place, sure. But I think the applicant has said they want to keep the look and feel and the architectural style. So maybe that one's not quite met. 4, the structure does not yield information to town history. And 5, the integrity has been compromised such that the structure no longer has potential to convey significance. Maybe that one's a little more debatable. But I mean, it seems like at least 3 out of the 5 clearly are met to support the decision to uphold the appeal. So that's the direction I'm going. I don't think we have to make all 5, right?
No, I would like to add that for me, I understand I am not an architect, and however, I do not, like, from when I sat on the HPC, I still feel like this structure does not actually even meet the criteria for number 3. I do not think that it exhibits anything that is significant to be represented as a Mediterranean revival. And I know that sometimes that can be like up to interpretation a little bit, but I just really do not believe that there's any distinctive characteristics of type, period, or method of construction, or obviously not representation of work or of a master. So for me, I think that the only HPC discusses a lot of these things a little bit more in depth, and the entryway seems to be something. It still has the clay tile roof, but other than that, there's nothing that is like distinctive about making it a Mediterranean revival, and that is, and in addition to the alterations that have been made. So I also am leaning towards granting the appeal because I think that we can make all of the required findings. Commissioner Stump.
I would agree with Commissioner Raspy that I too am torn over this because we do have a responsibility for historic preservation. I certainly wish this were more black and white, but we get paid the big bucks, I guess, to play in the gray. But it doesn't mean that it's fun, and I think it's particularly difficult for the appellants to hear us talk about kind of opinion. And by the way, that's fine. We have opinions, but I'm a guy that, in God we trust. All of this bring data, right? Where's our data for this to really nail this down? There is work that needs to be done. I see these books up here, A Field Guide to American Houses. I guess I need to get my copy. I don't have one to become more schooled in the whole world of historic preservation. But again, to repeat, I too am torn on this, as is Commissioner Raspy.
Vice Chair Birch, and then.
Well, if I look at, I guess the way I was looking at it, maybe to clarify, and you look at some of the defining styles of Mediterranean revival, obviously the stucco walls are still there. We do not have the clay style roof in the roof style that is normally associated. The only arched opening remaining is on that little front entry. All the windows have been infilled. The arch windows have been infilled with, Jeep sliders. There's not wrought iron. There's not, the different type of facade associated with them. So when I was thinking this through on that particular item, I did try to go through what are those key characteristics? What should we be making this finding on? And to me, the only part of this that's remaining in that style is that little entryway. And I wish we had the ability right now to say, if we, grant the appeal, the next home has to keep that type of look and feel, but I don't think we have that ability to do. We just need to trust the applicant that they do like that style, and what they're going to put back is very sympathetic.
Yeah, Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, so interestingly enough, when we say a house is a Queen Anne, a Craftsman, a Mediterranean revival, it's not always a clear-cut example of that, because as houses have evolved, they've taken on characteristics from the past and a little bit from the future. So if you look at a house and say, gosh, that really isn't a Mediterranean revival, and that probably could be true. This could have been a house, what was it built in 1928, did we say? 27? 26. And in the look of it, it really hasn't changed probably from what it originally looked like. So that's what I'm having a problem with. Okay, so it doesn't look like you go into this wonderful field study, and it isn't the cookie cutter look of what it's called. It's because it came through a time when materials were different or whatever. I think it has some basic, when you look at it, I think it does remind you of a Mediterranean revival, but maybe not with all the bells and whistles of one. But again, when Bloomfield looked at it, it was considered a presumptive historic, and it would have been considered a contributor. So that's where I get really messed up, because, you know, that, and she's a historian. She's a pretty famous person from San Francisco and wrote a lot of books on this. So it's sort of hard for me to render it that, well, it doesn't look like it's supposed to look, but even though that's probably what it looked like when it was originally built. And yeah, there's been some alterations, but they're not where it would, in her survey, it would not have changed character, destroy the overall character of the building. So again, I see the problems here, and you know, it's a difficult one, and I understand my fellow commissioners and sort of how I look at it as well. Thank you.
I have a question actually about that I've never actually asked about the Ann Bloomfield survey. Did Ann herself do this, or did someone else do it? Do we know? Staff, do we know or no?
As far as I know, she did that, and I think she had some assistance from local residents.
Okay, so she had assistance. Okay, from local residents. Yeah, I mean, I understand. Okay, that's all I have. Yes, Commissioner Aspie.
Just a procedural question. We're an even number tonight, sitting up at the dais. I'm going to ask staff, what is the result of a tie vote?
Thank you. I'm going to defer that to the planning director.
A split vote would equate to a denial of the appeal.
Can I just?
Yeah, Commissioner
Can I just
Burnett.
add a little background? You know, when the Loma Prieta earthquake hit Los Gatos, I don't know if I've lived here all my life, so many of the homes, and I live in the Glen Ridge district, people came in, realtors came in, homes were going to be demolished. And luckily, we had some really great people on committees who said, no, we have to save our downtown, we have to save our homes. So that's how the Historic Preservation Committee got really going, and then the survey got going. And they originally did like a windshield survey. It was a small little paper that they'd go through the neighborhoods and just give a quick description. And then if they felt that it could be a contributor, or she defined there were 5 districts that she felt should definitely be considered a historic district, they had a more in-depth survey and study and whatever. Now, this house was an outlier because it wasn't going to be in a district, but it was, if it had been, she thought it would be a contributor. So anyway, there's a whole history of why we take this seriously with our homes, because Los Gatos, unlike Saratoga, that lost a lot of their beautiful homes and the history of their town, because no one was there to save them, and no one in the council or the planning commission or the committees had the nerve to really say, no, this is not going to happen to Los Gatos. So things were tightened up, and we had design guidelines, and we had some rules to try and keep our town for what it was known for. And so that's sort of a little bit of the background of where we're at now. And it's getting harder and harder to hang on to some of the areas and plan developments and whatever. But just a little background.
Thank you for reminding us all of that. Thank you very much, Commissioner Burnett. I would just like to, since we are kind of split, I'm just going to kind of go back to the staff report and talk a little bit about some of the things that were in here, because I do believe that, the residential design guidelines in section 4 note that the town has a wealth of older homes, and many were constructed prior to 1941. But it also discusses that the residential design guidelines speak specifically to pre-1941 structures, and provides that pre-1941 structures have the potential to be historically significant, but not all will necessarily be classified as historic. And I think that this is where there is a little bit of a difference of approach. Like when I read this and understand and read the purpose of historic preservation is to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the public through protection, enhancement, perpetuation, and use of structures, sites, and areas that are reminders of past eras, events, and persons of important state or local history or national history, or provide significant examples of architectural styles of the past, or are landmarks, or are unique and irreplaceable assets to the town, or which provide for the future generations examples of physical surroundings in which past generations lived. I think that the key that all old, just because something was built before 1941 doesn't mean that it needs to be kept on the historic resources inventory if it doesn't provide some sort of significance. We know that we're all in agreement that no important person lived there. It's not the work of a master. There was no event associated with it. So I think that really what we each need to individually decide is if it was built before 1941 and you believe that that means that it needs to stay on the inventory, then I would like to hear a justification for that. But in my opinion, I don't think that just because it's older than 1941 means that it should. I understand that that's how we classify things in town, because obviously we're not going to go through and do this for every site, right? But for it to be taken off, like it explicitly says, not all will be classified as historic. And I do not believe that this is a reminder of a past era event. It's not a significant example of an architectural style. And it's not because, and that is true even probably before it was altered, to be honest with you, because the alterations that have been done, yes, the windows, some of the other alterations that perhaps we don't even know about, the addition, the roof, those things, like there were probably it probably did not have significant architectural detail and significance in a way to be a great example of a Mediterranean revival style to begin with. And so even just these minor alterations over the years has significantly compromised that integrity, in my opinion, which again is annoying that we have to sit here and talk about our opinions. I agree, as a person that is a scientist, like that's not something I'm comfortable with. But when I look at like what are the criteria for this, it's like the roof is a criteria. There's these things, and there's one remaining aspect of it that makes it something that is somewhat resemblance of a Mediterranean revival. So that's kind of where like my brain is at. And so I would just like to hear other people's opinions. And yes, Commissioner Burnett.
Just to come back, the survey, pre-1941 homes, not all received the contributor, that it could be a contributor check. A lot of the homes were said a non-contributor. It would not qualify in any way, shape, or form. So there was definitely a distinction. Not every pre-1941 home got the certification that, yes, it could be a contributor if it was in an historic district. Some said it was not a contributor and would not qualify because they did a very thorough evaluation criteria there were usually 14 different things they looked at. Now this one might not have been in that depth because they had different sheets of evaluating the criteria. But clearly, if it was not considered a contributor, it would have not gotten that rating. That's where the hang-up is on this one, I think.
I actually have a question about the Ann Bloomfield survey again, too, related to, it does say on here, ownership shown on maps, and it says 1891, and then there's like nothing near that. Does that just mean there was the property was owned, because we know that it was not obviously built in 1891. Do we know what that means?
I'm going to let the planning manager take this question.
Thank you, and I don't actually know what that means.
Okay.
I'd have to dig into it a little bit to see in some of the older parts of town where we do have homes that existed prior to 1891, what the survey results would be for those, and try and determine what was what the determination, how they made a determination there. It's unclear to me.
Okay.
And I'll just make an assumption, since we're all just giving our opinions tonight anyway.
Thanks.
I imagine that we had homes that, to Mr. Mullins' point, that went back that far, but that source name is blank next to 1891, which makes sense because this house didn't exist in 1891.
Okay.
And so it didn't start showing up, until it shows up at 1908, which the Black Book or Block Book, whichever that is referencing, and then obviously in the survey.
Okay. Thank you. So like maybe a neighboring property or something was near there. Well, in 1891. Okay. So I just also know that I appreciate the Ann Bloomfield survey, but on it, I mean, it only acknowledges that the alterations are windows, and there are clearly been significant other alterations. So I wonder if those had been kept track of more clearly, if it would have been actually still considered a contributor or not. So that's kind of also part of what I'm mulling over. Want to say anything?
So I think part of being on a commission is sitting here and being able to listen to divergent views. And as I indicated earlier, my opinion was not set and may not even yet be set, but I was listening to the chair speak, and two things I think spoke to me. First was, you're right, 1941 is an arbitrary date that was selected way back when, and it was never intended that all pre-1941 structures would be preserved. Commissioner Gurnett makes a good point. This one has a higher designation than just incorporated into the 1941 cutoff date. But as a town, I think it's a good remembrance. That was an arbitrary date really selected as a starting point for the discussion, but not the end point for the discussion. And I think we're all in agreement that of the 5 criteria that we're examining, only number 5 has any really relevance here. That is, the integrity has been compromised such that the structure no longer has the potential to carry or convey significance. And it's the word significance now that I'm looking on. Clearly, there has been significant alteration. But even without that, and again, my suspicion is that during the Bloomfield study, that was not noted because it would have, I think, been important enough for her to write down in her notes. But even looking at it now, I don't know that this is a peak or generally well-regarded example of Mediterranean architecture, even if that's what it is or isn't. It seems to me, not to denigrate the house, but it's a very cute home, but it's, I think we've seen many of them like them in town and other communities as well. I don't find it, from looking at it, to be a significant structure. If that's, I'm guessing that whoever drafted these words used that word intentionally. That is, it's supposed to carry, the building is supposed to carry some significance that we protect. And I'm not sure that this building, especially with the alteration in the back, has that. Again, I have not yet made up my mind, but listening to the chair speak, those are the words that kind of came across to me and are drawing my attention currently.
Should I just make a pass at a motion and just see where all the stuck people go, or do we want to keep conversation going?
What does anyone do?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go for it.
Let's go for it. I'll make a motion to grant the appeal and allow the removal of the property from the Historic Resources Inventory, subject to findings for CEQA, Section 15061B3, and also subject to the findings and considerations in section 4.6 of the residential design guidelines.
Vice Chair Birch?
I will second.
Is there any discussion about the motion or clarification? Are we good with the motion over there? Okay. I will call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion passes 5-1 with Commissioner Burnett in opposition, dissenting. Sorry, it's okay. Thank you. Are there appeal rights?
Yes, thank you,
Okay.
Chair. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision to the Town Council. Appeal forms are available online and in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Okay, thank you very much. We are done with our agenda items, so we will now move on to the report from the Director of Community Development. Director Paulson, do you have a report for us?
Just have 3 items to bring up. On October 21st, there'll be a joint Planning Commission Town Council study session regarding CEQA. I believe that you all have that on your calendar. The regularly scheduled October 22nd Planning Commission meeting will be canceled. We don't have any items. And lastly is to apologize for staff's error in not putting the discussion related to cellar square footage and FAR on tonight's agenda. So that will come forward at a future agenda for the Commission's discussion.
Yes, question, Commissioner Stump?
Do we have a topic or a subject for the October 29th meeting yet that's been scheduled?
Yes, we do. So currently it's the North 40 Phase 2.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Vice Chair Birch?
I don't actually think this is like a whole can of worms I want to open necessarily tonight, but if there's ever an opportune time, this is not the only time with the Ann Bloomfield, with the drive-by analysis that we have found that there's disagreement, like there's additions that aren't picked up or noted. This has happened a few times. I'm not always clear how much weight I'm supposed to give that because I have found that I've disagreed. You know, I go visit the property and she hasn't captured things. And maybe this is an offline, I come and visit you conversation, but I would really like to understand how much weight we give it because I think it does cause confusion. You have an opinion?
I do have an opinion. Okay. So, I mean, I think, that's reasonable. And I think that irrespective of the Bloomfield, it's a piece of information. And so once you find facts that maybe make you think about things differently, then you're perfectly free to do that. As has been mentioned, and I think Susan probably has the most information on the study because there were a lot of volunteers that also helped. It wasn't that Anne went to every single house and studied it and made notes. So there's going to be some discrepancies, and that's why we have the process. HPC sometimes, comes to the same conclusion that, yes, this should be removed for X, Y, and Z reason. And sometimes they have a little more difficulty with it, and then that's when we end up here.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Stump?
Just to add to that, I don't know if it's typical for Planning Commission to have study sessions, but if there was ever a need, in my opinion, for a study session, it's on historic preservation, because I would say that the commissioners that serve on the Historic Preservation Committee are wired in and connected. The other commissioners, I have not served on it. I know Joe has not served on it. I just feel we're at a deficit as it relates to information and really understanding the history and appreciating the history behind why we have historic preservation in Los Gatos. And I think it would give an opportunity also to educate. Hopefully, maybe there would be some interest from the public to participate and hear about this. Why do we do this? Let comments be made. I just think that it would benefit us all at this dais as well as members of the community.
Thank you for those comments. I think that, as a commissioner, this is my first sit on HPC, and it's been helpful in my understanding and appreciation. but I do agree that it's a little bit of an extra thing that we have to deal with, and so we can maybe bring that up at a future HPC meeting. And speaking of which, subcommittee reports, we haven't had any subcommittee meetings, so I think that we don't have any reports to give there. So thank you to staff, commissioners, and the public for your participation this evening, and being no further business of the commission, this meeting is adjourned.